Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Thank you very much for joining. Wanted to seek your good wishes and your blessings so that we can continue with overview of Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th Canto, 53rd chapter. So yesterday we read about how Krishna kidnapped Rukmini, and now today we're going to see the consequences of that. So this verse we can recite 10:53:46. Namasye twambike abhikshanam swasanatan yutam shivam bhuyat patir me bhagavan krishnastad anumodatam. So, translation by, this is Rukmini Devi praying, O Mother Ambika, wife of Lord Shiva, I repeatedly offer my obeisances unto you, together with your children. So her children are extraordinary, Ganesh and Kartikeya. May Lord Krishna become my husband. Please grant this. So we see more prayers to the devatas. And this is acceptable, of course, because we're praying for Krishna. So otherwise, praying to the demigods is likely to result in temporary fruits, and we end up in the planets of the demigods at the same time. So, but when we're praying, when the focus is always Krishna, then it's completely acceptable. So, this chapter is entitled Krishna Kidnaps Rukmini. This chapter describes how Lord Krishna arrived in Kundina. Did we not do this already?
Did we do this yesterday or?
Oh, maybe.
Oh, are we on 54? It's up to you.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, we did. Oops, sorry. Let's start again. Chapter 54. I'm losing the plot. Yatha shayana atmanam vishayantalam evacha anubhunkte api asatyarthe tatha noti abhudho bhavam. As a sleeping person perceives himself, the object of the sense enjoyment, and the fruits of his actions within the illusion of a dream. So one who is unintelligent undergoes material existence. So this is like a dream in a sense. It's real, but it's temporary. And that's our problem. We take this temporary place to be our permanent residence. And that's because we are unintelligent, undergoing material existence. So the marriage of Krishna and Rukmini. This chapter describes how Lord Krishna defeated the opposing kings after kidnapping Rukmini, disfiguring Rukmini's brother Rukmi. And he brought Rukmini to his capital and married her. So as Sri Krishna was taking Princess Rukmini away, the inimical kings gathered their armies and pursued him. Lord Baladev and the generals of the Yadav army turned to face these opponents. So Baladev was there to protect his younger brother with the other generals of the Yadav army. They blocked their advancement. The enemy armies then began pouring incessant showers of arrows upon Lord Krishna's army. Seeing her husband to be forces under such violent attack, Srimati Rukmini looked at Sri Krishna fearfully, but Krishna simply smiled and told her, "Don't be afraid, beautiful-eyed one. This enemy force is about to be destroyed by your soldiers." Okay, Balaram and his army defeat the kings. Lord Balaram and the other heroes then began to annihilate the opposing army with arrows. The enemy kings headed by Jarasandha retreated after suffering the destruction of their armies at the hands of the Yadavs. The heads of soldiers fighting on chariots, horses, elephants fell to the ground by the millions. Seeing their armies being struck down by the Vrishnis who were eager for battle or victory, the kings headed by Jarasandha were discouraged and they left the battlefield. So Krishna's older brother was there to protect him with the armies. Of course, Krishna doesn't need any protection, but this is one of the services that Balaram does for him. Gives him protection. Shishupal was disturbed like a man who had lost his wife. His complexion was drained of color. His enthusiasm was gone and his face appeared dried. Dried up. Jarasandha consoled Shishupal. Happiness and distress are never permanent and are under the control of the Supreme Lord. So this is interesting. So Jarasandha is preaching to Shishupal, don't worry. Happiness and distress, they come and go. And they're controlled by the Supreme Lord. Of course, they don't realize the Supreme Lord is right in front of them, Krishna. 17 times Krishna defeated me and my 23 armies. But in the end, I was victorious over him. So this is the false ego coming out in Jarasandha. Thus, seeing that victory and defeat are under the control of destiny and time, I have learned not to succumb to either lamentation or joy. Time now favors the Yadavs. So they have defeated you with only a small army. But in the future, time will favor you and you will surely conquer them. So interesting preaching by Jarasandha, giving Shishupal solace that don't worry, your time will come. Happiness and distress, they are temporary things. And of course, this preaching is absolutely spot on. Except the object of the law, the object of who's behind all of this impermanence, see, is the Supreme Lord. And he's standing right in front of them. So they don't understand that. They missed that point. Consoled in this way, Shishupal took his followers and returned to his kingdom. Anyway, so everybody gave up, except Rukmi. He was very stubborn. Rukmini's brother Rukmi, who hated Krishna, was infuriated by Krishna's kidnapping of his sister to marry her in the Rakshasa style. So after vowing before all the kings present that he would not return to Kundina until Krishna had been destroyed and Rukmini rescued, Rukmi set out with his army to attack the Lord. Ignorant of Lord Krishna's glories, Rukmi boldly went to attack Krishna in a lone chariot. He approached the Lord, struck him with arrows, demanded that he release Rukmini. Sri Krishna fended off Rukmi's weapons, breaking them to pieces. Then he raised his sword high, and so he was about to kill him. He was about to kill Rukmi. But Rukmi's sister was just there. So Rukmini interceded and she pleaded fervently, please don't kill my brother, spare his life. Now what was Krishna to do? He wanted to kill Rukmi, but his wife-to-be has just pleaded for Rukmi's life. So, okay, Krishna did not want to kill Rukmi in that case, because Rukmini had requested it. So he always fulfills the desires of his devotees. But he wanted to make an example of Rukmi. So with his sword, he shaved off bits of Rukmi's hair here and there, leaving him disfigured. So this is Lord Krishna. He's effectively killed Rukmi by shaving off his hair here and there, tying him up. This is really quite, for a Kshatriya, this is worse than death. Better to die. Baladev reproaches Krishna. Then Baladev appeared on the scene with the Yadav army. Seeing Rukmi disfigured, he gently reproached Krishna. He told him off, "My dear Krishna, you have acted improperly. This deed will bring shame on us. For to disfigure a close relative by shaving off his moustache and hair is as good as killing him. A relative should not be killed, even if his wrongdoing warrants capital punishment. Rather, he should be thrown out of the family. Since he has already been killed by his own sin, why kill him again?" So this is the problem with sin. It destroys one. So Baladev's argument is, look, he's destroyed himself already. Why did you have to chop off his moustache and disfigure him in this way? Then Baladev consoles Rukmini. Baladev told Rukmini that the sorry condition of her brother was only the fruit of his past work, since everyone is responsible for his own happiness and suffering. So this is a really important point. We might be going through some challenges, and we may even point at some people who are the cause of those challenges. But ultimately, we need to understand that we are responsible for our own happiness and distress. We are the cause of the happiness and distress because of our past activities, our desires, etc. So we take responsibility for them. We don't point fingers. It's not somebody else's fault. It's my own fault. In that way, actually, we become a little bit more controlled, because then we realize that actually we can't blame anybody else. We just accept and try to improve. Much better way to deal with it than pointing fingers at others. When we start pointing fingers, we shift the blame onto self. I'm perfect, but this person isn't. And then we get ourselves into a little bit more trouble. So she should not be displeased with them, well, Krishna and Balaram, out of anxiety for the brother's disfigurement. He further instructed her that her attitude was unfair. For, like an ignorant person, she wished good to those who are inimical to all living beings and who have done evil to her true well-wishers. So Krishna and Balaram are her true well-wishers. And she knows that, but she just had some affection for the brother. So she was pleading for mercy on his behalf. Maya makes men forget their real selves and thus taking the body for the self. This material body, which has a beginning and an end, is composed of material elements, the senses, and modes of nature. Birth and other transformations are undergone by the Lord, but never by the self. The soul never undergoes contact with or separation from insubstantial material objects. Because the soul is their very origin and illuminator. But we've forgotten that. We identify with the body, not with the soul. But the soul actually has nothing to do with the body. It's residing in the body, yes, but it's separate from the body. Just like the driver is separate from the car, although he goes into the car to drive it. But if one identifies with the car rather than oneself, then one will be regarded stupid, illusioned. You're not the car, you're the driver. So in the same way, we're not the body, we're the driver, the soul. With transcendental knowledge, dispel the grief that is weakening and confounding the mind. So this is Balaram's preaching, very powerful preaching. Accepting Lord Balaram's instructions, Rukmini gave up her sorrow. So, what happened to Rukmini? Left with only his life air, cast out by his enemies, deprived of his strength and bodily radiance, Rukmini could not forget how he had been disfigured. In frustration, he constructed for his residents a large city, which he called Bojakat. Now, he couldn't go back, right? Because he had promised, I will not re-enter Kundina until I have killed wicked Krishna and brought back my younger sister. So in a mood of angry frustration, Rukmi took residence at that very place where he was defeated by Krishna. And then we'll see later in Bhagavatam what happens to Rukmi. Lord Krishna took Rukmini to his capital, Dwarka, and married her according to the Vedic injunctions. So although we had the Rakshasa style, which is the kidnapping, but actually the Lord married her according to the Vedic injunctions. And as far as I understand, might be wrong on this, but didn't he marry her outside of Dwarka? Was that something else?
Mm. Yeah, on the outskirts of Dwarka.
All the citizens celebrated in lavish style, broadcasting throughout the city accounts of how the Lord had kidnapped Rukmini. The city of the Vrishnis appeared most beautiful. There were tall, festive columns and also archways decorated with flower garlands, cloth banners and precious gems, arrangements of auspicious, full water pots, agru-scented incense and lamps graced every doorway. Those who belonged to the royal families of the Kurus, the Srinijaya, Kaikaya, Vidarbha, Yadu and Kunti clans joyfully met one another in the midst of the crowds of people excitedly running here and there. Everyone in Dwarka was delighted to see Lord Krishna united with Rukmini, the goddess of fortune. So, I haven't read this anywhere, but this picture keeps coming up where Lord Brahma is actually the one who is presiding over the wedding of Rukmini and Krishna. So, and of course, he is head of our Sampradaya. So, very interesting. Have you read anyway? Brahma is conducting the marriage. Have you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And I think this is the temple, right? In outside of Dwarka, and it's Rukmini. Only Rukmini is here. So.
Yeah, something to do with Durvasa Muni. He came and he asked for, I think, for water or something, and then I think she didn't give it, and then so he's. I can't remember the exact details, but then he said you will have to stay outside of Dwarka.
She lives in Dwarka, but
yeah,
for the wedding maybe. Anyway, anybody know any pastimes here? Or are there any questions? Otherwise, we can go.
I have heard that Rukmini Devi drank water before Durvasa Muni. That's why she was cursed by Durvasa Muni to stay outside Dwarka.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
If they were going somewhere or they were returning to Dwarka or something, and then outside Dwarka, Rukmini drank the water. Things like that.
Thank you. Yeah, I couldn't remember the exact details. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any comments, any questions? Otherwise, Madhusun Prabhu, you'd like to take the instructions?
Okay, Haribol?
Yes.
Okay, do the instructions, yeah, okay. 54, then it's interesting to note how Jarasan actually pacifies Shishupal, understanding the supremacy of time and favorable circumstances according to destiny and karma, and how he himself lost to Krishna 17 times, and then won the 18 times, so-called, not accepting the supremacy of the Lord in all these kind of actions. I mean, he didn't understand that ultimately Supreme Lord controls everything. So happiness, distress. His preaching is interesting, actually. You know, it's quite intelligent in that way. But he doesn't recognize the fact that, you know, Krishna is there in front of him. And so he explains the cause of happiness, distress. We learn how Rukmi gets dealt with by Krishna. So obviously, you know, he was not kind of willing to accept the defeat. We kept on attacking Krishna, and then Krishna dishonors him, actually, you know, cutting his hair. And in contrast, we also learn how Lord Balaram actually instructs and pacifies Rukmini. You know, it's to Rukmini how Lord Balaram says that, you know, oh, your attitude is unfavorable. For like an ignorant person, you wish good to those who are inimical to all living entities and who have done evil to your true well-wishers. So those who are not favorable to the principles and laws and dharma, and they're inimical to other living entities, then you're thinking favorably of them. But amazingly, how the perception of are so opposite to sort of demoniac and kind of devotee viewpoints. That's what we learn. And then also finally, then Balaram is saying, Sukadeva Goswami said, thus enlightened by Lord Balaram, slender Rukmini forgot her depression and steadied her mind by spiritual intelligence. So there is a difference between spiritual intelligence and material intelligence, and how when you're instructed properly and guided properly, then you actually do become free from depression, or like you say, our mind becomes a bit steady as well. Become a Dhira Purusha. I think that's what comes out from these kind of chapter, and how to pacify intelligently, you know. So, okay, yeah, thank you for the instructions.
Yeah, no, thank you. Very good. Surinder, anything you'd like to add? Okay, otherwise, no other questions? We can go to the Nrsimha Kavach. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, chapter 54, 10th canto ki jai.